everyone, welcome to the channel. And in this particular video we are going to talk about the AWS interview questions. Here we are specifically going to talk about 10 interview questions, and these are specifically from the AWS. And as you know, we are covering the multiple AWS interview services. So accordingly, I am covering the multiple interview questions as well, which are the real one. So our first question goes as, what is user data in EC2? So if you remember, when we were talking about the EC2, we were talking about the user data as well. And in the user data, we were running few of the scripts, as you can see. And with the help of these scripts, we were able to install the softwares, and we were able to run the prerequisite kind of thing. So whatever prerequisite you have to do on your server side, that all the file creation, software installation, all those things you can do on the EC2 before it gets launched. So whenever your EC2 will come up and it will be in running state, it will come up with all those script execution prior to its running state. So that's the help of the user data. There it will fit in, and it will help you to do the automation kind of thing, or to complete the prerequisite kind of thing while launching your virtual server. Your second question comes as, explain the usage of EIP in EC2. So EIP we have talked while talking about the EC2, and if you remember, EIP stands for Elastic IP address, and this one I think I do have this covered. Yeah, Elastic IP. It's a static public IPv4 address provided by AWS, and it can be used to associate with instance or network interface in a virtual private cloud. Where it is used, like if you have the private EC2 instance, or even if you have a public EC2 instance, and if you see, whenever you start and stop the EC2 instance, its public IP gets changed once you stop and start, correct? But if you want to make it static, you want that same public IP should be there across the multiple state of the your EC2 instance. For that, you can launch one EIP and you can associate that with your EC2 instance. That will be having a cost, but it will give you a static IP address for your EC2. So that's the usage of your EIP in EC2. Third question comes as, how do we provide a static IP to AWS EC2 instance? So third question is very similar to the second one, but it has been asked in a different way. So whenever you have to provide a static IP to your AWS EC2 instance, you can create one EIP, and you can associate that with the your AWS EC2 instance. Fourth question, what are the different types of EC2? So for that, you can similarly refer to these instance types: t2.micro, t2.xlarge, c5.xlarge, and even if you want to talk in more details, so there are multiple categories of this EC2 instance: general purpose, compute optimized, memory optimized, accelerated, storage optimized, and a different one. There are different families as well: the general purpose, the T family, R family for memory optimized, and C5 for compute optimized. So these are the different categories of the EC2 instances that you can learn more. Then what fifth question, what's the default route in main route table? So route table, if you remember, we have talked that in every VPC there is a default route table, and that default route table is called is main route table as well. So in the main route table, there is one route mentioned, that is as local, and the destination CIDR of your VPC. That means any request which is made from the which is made inside the VPC, that can transverse between this VPC, correct? So it has the full access to flow and to communicate, to establish the communication between the multiple services within the VPC. So that default route is already there in your main route table. Sixth question is, what is the use of VPC endpoint? So if you remember, we have talked about the VPC endpoint as well, and there we have talked about how your private resources can communicate with the other AWS services without using NAT, and without using internet gateway. So here we have talked about the VPC endpoint. Let me go to the slide there, VPC endpoint, this one. So here if you see, there is a EC2 instance which is in the private subnet, and it has to communicate with the AWS S3 service. For that, there is a VPC endpoint. So with the help of VPC endpoint, you can directly communicate with the other services and it will establish a private communication. So here you left out the NAT gateway, left out the internet gateway, and you directly connected with your AWS S3 with the help of VPC endpoint. It saves your cost as well. It saves your it ensures your security as well by establishing a private network between the different services. Then seventh question comes, how do we ensure that EC2 can avail internet but no request from outside can be made to web app running on AWS EC2? So for that you can create one NAT gateway, and that NAT gateway you can configure in your private subnet, so that only the EC2 instances can make the request for the internet, but no one can from the outside make the request to the your EC2 instance. Correct. So NAT concept will come into here, and that NAT we have talked about here. So in the starting when we were talking about the VPC, so here probably we have talked about the subnets, and then the public subnet and internet gateway, and then NAT gateway. So here if you see we have this private EC2 in private subnet. It's trying to make the internet request to the internet, that is possible, but while internet is trying to make the request to the EC2 instance, that is broken. So this NAT gateway will come into the picture for this seventh question. Then question is what is target group, and ninth question is define auto scaling group and different policy. So let's see all these three questions together: target group, auto scaling, and different types of load balancer. So for that we will have to move to this EC2 section, and for that let's go from the last question: application load balancer and network load balancer. So these are the two different types of load balancer. The purpose, the protocol support, performance, routing features, sticky sessions, and the use cases are mentioned here. Mainly your application load balancer works on layer 7, while network load balancer work on layer 4. The protocol supported by application load balancer is HTTP, HTTPS, while network load balancer support TCP, UDP, TLS, and the use cases. Network load balancer can be used for those use cases where you need very low latency, and the use cases where you need real-time data streaming for the election results, for live real-time gaming, for live news streaming or something. For IoT related things you can use the NLB, while for the simple microservice architecture web application you can use this application load balancer. Then one of the question was on the target groups. So target group, let's talk about here. Target groups are nothing but it's just the combination or the group of the different EC2 instances which are fulfilling a similar kind of business need. Like if you have different microservices, and for one microservice slash first or slash cart, you want to route the traffic to one target group which will be having 5 EC2 instances, so that whatever the request is coming for the card system, that will go for all these 5 EC2 instances. So with the help of target group you can combine multiple EC2 instances to share the workload. Then the last question was based on the auto scaling group. So if you see, there was a last question, the what is target group, that we covered, different types of load balancer we covered, then auto scaling group. So auto scaling group, it's one of the property of the AWS EC2 instance, you can say, where we do the scaling of the EC2 instances based on the some certain conditions. Correct. So it's a collection of EC2 instances that are treated as a logical grouping for the purpose of automatic scaling and management. It lets you Amazon EC2 instance features such as health check replacement and scaling policy, both maintaining the number of instances in auto scaling group and automatically scaling are the core functionality of the EC2 auto scaling service. What are the different policy? Target tracking scaling, then step scaling, then simple scaling. In simple scaling, it increases and decreases the current capacity of the group based on a single scaling. So one time it will do the scaling, then it will wait for some time. That time duration will be called as cooldown period. Then once again it will do the scaling. For example, CPU utilization goes up to 70%. Auto scaling will add 2 instances, and it will wait for few seconds, it might be minute, and then it will do the further scaling. In the step scaling, it will do based on the how much breach has happened. So it adjusts the capacity of auto scaling based on the magnitude of the alarm breach. So if your threshold reaches up to 70%, it will launch 2 EC2 instance. If it goes for 80%, it will launch 5 EC2 instance. If it goes up to 90, it will launch 10. So based on the different threshold, it will launch the different kind of a scaling it will do. While the target tracking scaling, it does based on the it kind of it does the scaling logically, like if the breach is higher, it will scale up on the higher number. If breach goes down, it will scale down the number of EC2 instances. So it increases and decreases the current capacity of the group based on the temperature, Amazon CloudWatch metric, and a target value. It works similar to the way that your thermostat maintains the temperature of your room. Let's go with the example. If you set a target CPU utilization of 50%, auto scaling add or remove instances as needed to keep CPU usage around 50%. So it will scale up and scale down both. Correct. So that's what we wanted to cover during this AWS interview questions, and we will meet in the next video with the further AWS interview questions and other DevOps interview questions. Till the time, thank you. Bye bye. Stay tuned and subscribe to the channel for more technical content. Everyone, welcome to the channel, and in this video we are going to talk about the AWS interview questions. So till the time we have talked about the different AWS services, the different concepts of the AWS EC2, AWS BPC, AWS time role policy, and many more stuffs we have talked about. In details, we have talked about the EC2 EIP, load balancer, auto scaling group, launch template, target groups, path-based routing, and in terms of BPC, we have talked about the BPC peering, transit gateway, BPC endpoint, and so many things. In this video, we are going to talk about this AWS interview questions, which are the second part of the about interview questions specific to AWS. So, in continuation to all this, let's start with the first question. When should we use NACL and security group? So before talking about when should we use NACL and security group, we should understand where all these get applied. So NACL, if you have watched out the videos what I have uploaded on the channel, NACL applies on the subnet level, while your security groups applies on the instance level. Correct. So if you see over here, NACL works on the subnet level. You can see this is the VPC, this is the NACL which works on the subnet level, and security group works on the EC2 instances. Correct. So whenever the request is comes to your VPC, that goes from if there is internet, that goes to the NACL. From NACL it gets entry in the subnet, and from this after that it gets in the security group. Once security group verifies, then your request goes to the EC2 level. Correct. So if you have to apply any rule on the subnet level, that this kind of request can come, this kind of request can go outside, then you should NACL. If you want to restrict or apply or deny kind of thing on the EC2 level, on the resource level itself, correct, then you can apply the security group. So that comes as your first answer to the first question, when should we use NACL and security group. Correct. Second question, like the 12th question, what is the default properties of NACL and security group? So the default properties of NACL and security group is NACL is statelets. That means whatever the request is coming inside the subnet, you have to explicitly mention that this request should go outside as well. That means it does not remember any statelets, and by default it allows all the requests. That means it does not check for anything. By default it allows anything, but if you have to explicitly mention anything, then you will have to mention it in inbound and outbound both, if you want to allow the same thing as well. While the security group is stateful, that means whatever you define in the inbound, it remembers all those things to go outside as well. Correct. So if you see, by default a security group deny all inbound traffic and allow all outbound traffic. Correct. Then so that is the thing over here. And for the comparison part, let's go here. Security group and NACL is, can see, operates at EC2 instance or ENI level, while NACL operates at subnet level. Security group only allow rules it supports, while NACL supports both allow and deny. That means from the NACL you can say that this kind of request should be allowed, this kind of request should be denied at your subnet level. Correct. Then all rules are evaluated before making a decision to the for the security group, and for NACL rules are evaluated in the order lower to higher. That means if there are three rules, so for the security group all the three rules will be evaluated at one time, while the for the NACL the first rule will be checked and whatever the result will be there, that will be applied. After that second and third will be checked, so it goes on the one by one, while the security group is stateful and NACL is stateless, that we can see. 13th question is what is VPC, and then 14th question is how many types of subnet you have created. So let's go with the what is VPC. So VPC here we have talked about in the beginning of the VPC slide. So let me go over here, Amazon VPC, yes. So you can see VPC stands for Virtual Private Cloud, which is a secure isolated private cloud that is hosted within a public cloud. VPC allow organizations, VPC allow organizations to use public cloud resource while still being benefiting privacy of a private cloud. So if you have watched out the video, what I have covered to launch the VPC, so you can better understand what is the VPC, how VPC came into the picture, what is the use cases. But here just a simple example that VPC stands for Virtual Private Cloud, and it's a private area within the public cloud where you can apply your own rules, where you can launch your own resources, you can control all these things according to yourself. So virtual private cloud is nothing but a smaller space within the public cloud where you can play according to yourself. Correct. Then how many types of subnets you have created? So in general there are two kind of subnets, private and public one. So if the subnet what you have launched, and that subnet will be of course part of a route table, if that route table will be having the internet gateway associated with it, then that subnet which is the part of that route table will become your uh, public subnet. While if the route table does not have that internet gateway associated with that, that becomes your private subnet. So if you see here, this is public subnet, this is private subnet. Why? This public subnet is having the access to 000 internet gateway, correct? While this is a private subnet. Private subnet does not have the access to 00 with the internet gateway, correct? Here you can see. So it is having the access of the NAT. Through the NAT it can go to the internet, correct? NAT will be there in the route table of the private subnet, and then this NAT gateway is associated in the public subnet, and then from the public subnet it can go to the internet. So this is the way how private subnet can communicate to the internet. So the subnet which is the part which is associated as the route table, and that route table is having the direct access of the internet, that subnet will be public. And the subnet which is the for which the route table is not having the access to the internet directly, that will be a private subnet. So that's the difference between these two, and there are mainly these two kind of subnets. You can create other subnets as well with the different names, database subnet or transit gateway subnets, anything, but these are the basic features. How do you launch a public EC2 machine? To launch a public EC2 machine, you will have to create a VPC, you will have to create a subnet, you will have to create a route table. In the route table, you will have to mention your internet gateway. So for mentioning internet gateway, you will have to create one internet gateway. That internet gateway should be attached with the VPC, correct? And then you can mention it in the route table. In the same route table, you can associate your subnet, and then in this particular subnet, you can create your first EC2 machine, and that will be your public EC2 machine. As you can see from here as well, this is a kind of EC2. This EC2 is launched in a subnet. This subnet is a public subnet, as you can see here as well. And why this is public subnet? Because the route table which is associated with it, it is having the access to the internet. So this is how you can launch your public EC2 machine. Then can we change the private IP address of EC2 machine? No. If you launch your public EC2 machine or any EC2 machine, the private IP address of that EC2 instance cannot be changed. If you are launching the public one, public IP address can be changed once it starts again after the stopping, correct? If you stop and start, public IP can get changed, but private IP will remain the same. So this cannot be changed. Question number 17, how to connect AWS S3 bucket from AWS EC2 machine? So there are various ways to connect this S3 bucket with the EC2 machine. So there is one way that you create your AWS IAM role and policy, and that you attach with your EC2, and then you can access your this one. You can access your S3 bucket, correct? So there are multiple ways that we have talked. We had created public EC2 machine, then associated internet gateway with that. We created config file to get credentials. So on EC2 machine, you can run AWS configure command, and there you can pass secret key, access key, and with the help of that, it will be having the permission. Then you can run the AWS S3 ls command, and it will be able to communicate with the S3. The alternative was that you attach the IAM role and policy. If your EC2 machine is private, then you can use the VPC endpoint as well, and you can directly create VPC endpoint that will help you to establish the communication between EC2 to S3. If you are not sure how these things work, a detailed video on all these topics, how to create VPC endpoint, how you can use this first and second options, all these detailed videos are available on the channel that you can watch out, and you will be able to understand in more details. The question number is 18th. How to establish the communication between two VPC? To establish the communication between two VPC, there is a concept of VPC peering. Here you can see from the diagram, if there is a VPC A, VPC B, then you can establish the communication between these two VPC, correct? How to establish the VPC peering, you can watch out the video, there you will be understand in details. Other than this VPC peering, there is a concept of transit gateway as well. Transit gateway can be utilized to establish the communication between multiple VPC, correct? Now, when to use VPC peering and transit gateway? That's the another question. So if you have two VPC peering will be fine. As soon as the number of VPC grow to establish the communication, VPC peering becomes more complex, and transit gateway becomes more helpful for you, correct? As you can see, transit gateway is there to establish the multiple communication with the single hub and multiple attachments to the different VPC. But in the VPC peering, you have to establish the communication from one to one, from this VPC to this VPC to this, then from here to there. So it's the complex. VPC peering gets complex according to the increasing number of size, while the transit gateway gives you the one connection per VPC, correct? How both of these are much helpful, that you can understand from the videos that I have already created on the channel. For this one I also, you can watch out the video. Then last question, when AWS service can be, which AWS service can be utilized for data storage in organized way like row and column? So for that, this one you can use this AWS RDS service. There you can create multiple RDS instances to store your data in table format like row and column, and that will be helpful and it will be easy to manage for you. So in this particular video, I wanted to talk about all these things, and in next video we'll be talking more AWS interview questions and other tech stacks interview questions. Till the time, thank you, stay tuned and subscribe to the channel. That will be helpful for me as well to upload the newer content. Thank you. Welcome to my channel, and here we are going to discuss about the AWS interview questions, and that is our part 3. So earlier I have covered this part 1, part 2, and in this video we are going to talk about part 3. So these are the interview questions which are being asked generally, and these are the real questions as well which I have faced and I even used to ask when I interview someone. So you can focus on all these questions, and let's go with the explanation of these questions as well. So the first question comes as, how can we access S3 bucket from EC2? So to do this, there are multiple options. If you have gone through these slides and PPT what I have covered on my channel. So if you are not aware, I have covered the complete tutorial before these interview questions. So, and meanwhile, I used to create the interview questions as well. So I have talked about the AWS cloud in much details. I have also talked about the AWS EC2 instance and the different properties of the EC2 like user data, elastic IP address, or your different load balancer, auto scaling group, then your target groups, the launch template, and load balancers. Then I have talked about the AWS IAM roles, users, policy, and all these things. And even I have talked about the AWS BPC, NAT gateway, Internet gateway, BPC transit gateway setup, then your BPC endpoint, BPC peering. We have also talked about the S3 buckets and so on. More topics on the AWS cloud, correct? Here we have been asked that how can you set up the access from EC2 to S3, correct? So the question is very simple. You have to establish the connection from EC2 to S3. That means you have to grant the access as well. So what you will do, if your EC2, that is your server, is in public subnet, correct? That means your EC2 is a public EC2 instance. It is having the public IP address as well. So you have to do a simple thing. You just have to create one IAM role. To this IAM role, you will create certain policy which will have the access of S3, and this IAM role will be attached to your EC2 instance, correct? You will get into the actions of the EC2, then you will do the settings, and within the setting modify this settings, and you will attach this IAM role to the EC2 instance. Now your EC2 instance will have the access to S3 bucket, correct? And then if you run AWS CLI commands on your server, it will access the S3 bucket and it will perform all the operations whatever you want, correct? So that's the simple way to connect your public EC2 machine to the S3. Second question comes as what is trust relationship and policy. For that, let's move to moves here, and here we have talked about this IAM role and policy, correct? Then that was the question. What is the difference between role? Sorry, what was the question? The trust relationship and the policy. So for that, let's see here. So these are the AWS IAM policy, correct? As you can see, these are some custom managed policy as well, and few are of the AWS managed policy as well. So these policies which you can see here, it is already written AWS managed policy, correct? So these are already defined by the AWS cloud itself. While if you want to create your own policy, like you want to exclude some of the permission, you only want to perform the get kind of operation, you don't want the modify, delete, those kind of permissions, so you can create your inline policy that will be called your customer managed policy. So these are the policy, and let's talk about the trust relationship as well here, correct? So this is the policy you can see, and here it goes as a trust relationship. So what is the thing here? Whatever the things you will define in this trust relationship, just suppose that I'm defining a particular role here, correct? So you can see the in the AWS AR and AWS IAM, and certain role is defined over here. So what we are telling that through this AWS IAM role, which is mentioned over here, the Manish role you can see, and whatever the permission is attached to this role, these all actions can be performed through these roles, correct? This one Manish role is a different role. You can suppose just like a human being A. These two roles are, you can suppose like the human being B and C. Now if these are mentioned, these A, B and C are mentioned in trust relationship, that means you are telling that B and C can perform the operations on the A using this role, whatever the permissions are listed over here, correct? So on all those services you can perform the action. So this is the trust relationship, and policy is very simple. What are all the policies are attached to this role, so those kind of actions can be performed. Who can perform the action? Those who are mentioned in the trust relationship. So together with this particular role, this role can perform the actions, and even you can perform the actions from this role as well. So this is the difference between your trust relationship and the policy. Third question comes as how will EC2 connect to S3 without internet? So this is kind of replica to your 21st question, but a little bit change, correct? A twist kind of thing you can say. In first questions we considered our EC2 to be a public one. In third question we are considering that now our EC2 is not a public one. That means it is a private one. So for that you don't have to even attach the internet, so you won't be attaching the NAT gateway, correct? So if you don't have to attach the NAT gateway, so what you will do, you will jump to this new topic, and here we talked about the VPC endpoint, correct? So let me go there, and here we will be talking about the VPC endpoint. So through the VPC endpoint, you will be able to connect your private EC2 instance. One way was that you do have the access when it is in the public subnet, you directly connect it with your S3 bucket. If you have a private EC2 instance, you can attach the net, and then net will have the access to internet, and then you can attach. But you don't have to follow this path because you don't have to access the internet, correct? So for that, there is another way that is called as a VPC endpoint. VPC endpoint will directly connect your directly establish the connection from S3 to the EC2, correct? So this way you can connect your private EC2 instance to the S3 bucket, correct? So that's the simple answer for your third question. How will EC2 connect to S3 without internet? 24th question, how to handle the secret in AWS? To handle the secret in AWS, there is a different service that is called as your AWS Secret Manager. And with the help of that AWS Secret Manager, you can store all the credentials. Either it might be your database related credential, or it might be your API token, or any kind of credentials or secret, whatever you want to store. That all those things you can store over here, correct? Even you can rotate the credentials if there is a security concern, obviously, correct? For the production databases, or for any other things, you can even rotate using the lambda function. So this is the service you can consider for handling the secret. 25th question is, suppose you have a large archive data and this needs to be deleted when it gets 1 year older. What action will you take to store this? So two topics out of S3 is combined over here. That first questions comes like when we talk about the archival data, that means we are focusing on the different storage class of the S3. And then even if we want to delete this data after 1 year, so we are considering the lifecycle management here as well. So let's move to the S3. And in S3, if you see earlier while covering the tutorial, I have already covered all these things. And if you are not aware, you can hit on the subscribe button, and with the help of that you will get the notification of every content which I used to upload. And you will really enjoy the content as well, and you will start learning the DevOps. You will be completely I will see that you will be feel that it's a kind of your hands-on on the services, correct? So let's talk about the storage class. So these are the storage class which can be utilized to store your data. When we talk about the archival, if you see the question, it is saying that you do have the archive data and it needs to be deleted after 1 year, correct? So for that, you will store all this data in S3 Glacier Deep Archive, which will have a low cost in comparison to the S3 standard and other storage classes. So you will store your data in S3 Glacier Deep Archive, and once you are done with that, you can go with your life cycle rules, correct? You can create life cycle rules. If you are not aware, you can watch out the videos what I have already created on life cycle rules, on the replication rules. In the life cycle rules, you can create the rules which will say that your data will move from S3 Glacier Deep Archive to deletion after certain number of days. So there you can create the rule which will say that earlier whenever the data will be uploaded to S3 bucket, it will directly move to archive S3 archival, and after 365 days it will get deleted, correct? So those kind of rule you can configure over here for the 25th number of question. Next question is 26th. Suppose there are two S3 buckets and they need to share the data to each other. What will you do? So this question comes as your the general question what is being asked, that you can say that you have to establish the cross communication between the S3 buckets. Either it may be in a same account or a different account, same region or different region. What you will have to do, you will have to create a different role in a different account, and that role ARN needs to be passed in AWS S3 bucket policy, correct? In the first bucket. So with the help of this bucket policy and the permissions, you can grant access from one S3 bucket to another bucket. Next question, what are the difference between load balancer and why do we need them? So load balancers are basically needed for routing the traffic. And when it comes that what are the difference between these two? So for that we will understand it from the diagram over here, I think. Yeah, so there are two kind of load balancers mainly, and the third one is also there, but we will be talking about these two, which are the famous one: application load balancer and the network load balancer. Pointers you can read from here, and let's directly move to the use case. Web applications requiring advanced routing, microservice or service less architecture, correct? So these this application load balancer can be utilized when you do have web applications. You do have e-commerce platform, you do have a certain websites, correct, for organizing the events and other things. If you require the real-time data streaming or the IoT related things or gaming related things, for that you can use the network load balancer, where you need a high throughput on the network side, correct, high performance on the network side. For that you can use this network load balancer. So that's the simple answer for your 27th question. And for the next, what is the meaning of HGM role in IAM? assume role is nothing but just like the trust relationship. You assume a different role, correct? You have a role A, you do have a role B. To role A, you say that B can assume you, that means B can access you, and through the when it will access you, that means it will be having all the power what you have, correct? So B will be having all the powers what A have, and it can perform those actions. So to B, you are not directly getting delivering all the permissions, but you are passing a tunnel kind of thing. You are going through the A and then you are performing the action. So those kind of things can be set up through the assume role. That assume role ARN can be passed in the trust relationship, just like the similar way what we have talked earlier when we were talking about the AWS IAM role and policy here. So yeah, I talked about here. So in the trust relationship, you can mention the different role ARN and that will be trusted. What is the usage of subnet? The subnet. Subnet is nothing but it's you can say logical separation of your networking part, correct? So you do have a VPC. Within the VPC, there are multiple subnets can be created, and you can create the public subnet, you can create the private subnet, you can control the security groups for those, you can control the NACLs for these, and your different resources can lie in the public subnet or private subnet. So it's just a logical separation of IP addresses within this VPC, correct? That's the simple difference, the use case of the subnets. Then a last question: what is the way to pre-install the required software on your server before it comes up in running state? So this questions comes from your EC2 instance, and that is related to your AWS user data. So when we talk about the AWS user data, we say that with the help of this user data, you can pre-install all the softwares which are required. So this is the example. If you have to install software on your EC2 machine, like you have to enable your install your Docker, you have to install Jenkins, you have to install your Python, Java, or any kind of software or any directory or files you have to create on your server before it comes up, correct? So all those installation you can write in your EC2 user data, and that will run meanwhile your EC2 instance is getting logged. That means whenever your EC2 instance will be available and it will be in running state, it will have all the software installed over this, correct? So this way you can answer to all these questions which will come in your DevOps interview or the cloud interview or the platform interview or for the SRE interview or even for the development. So this is the way how you can answer all these questions. So in this video I wanted to talk about all these things, and let's meet in the next video. Till the time, thank you, bye bye to the channel. And here in this particular video we are going to talk about the AWS interview question, and this is the part 4 of the interview questions, correct? In this video we are going to talk about the scenario based interview questions which comes in your AWS interview or the DevOps interview or any of the interview which is related to the cloud. So the first question is, I have 3 EC2 machines A, B and C. A, that means A machine is deployed in VPC A, while B and C are deployed in VPC B, correct? What does that mean? That means you have 3 machines, out of which first is deployed in one VPC and rest of the 2 are deployed in the second VPC. Now I want that applications running on EC2A. That means the application is running on first machine which is in the part of VPC1, and rest of the EC2 machines on which applications are running is in the second VPC, correct? Now what you have to do, you have to set up the communication between these two, correct? If you can see, application running on EC2A also interacts with application running on EC2B, but at the same time I want that application A should not interact with the C. That means you have to establish the cross VPC communication, but you don't have to allow it for every EC2 machines, correct? So what approach you will do here? First of all, you will have to establish either VPC peering, correct? So for that, either you will do the VPC peering connection directly between the these two VPC, or you can set the transit gateway concept that I have already covered in the channel. So you can watch out there as well. So you will have to set up the VPC peering between these two VPC, correct? A and B, and then you will have to pass this in the route domains, correct? Sorry, the route table itself. The term is route table. So you will have to configure the CIDR of the first VPC in the second route table of the second VPC, and then the second VPC CIDR in the route table of first VPC, correct? Then only the VPC A and B can allow the request or the network or the traffic which is coming to interact with each other, correct? So that VPC pairing you will have to establish. Then you will have to implement the security group so that the request can go up to there on the second VPC, second application which is in the which is on the second machine, that is called as B, correct? So here it comes as a VPC pairing connection, and then the security group and NACL. All these three concepts will come here into the picture to implement this. Then next question, on a day with unusually high traffic for an e-commerce application, how would you as a cloud engineer manage the current setup to handle the load smoothly? What does that mean? Just suppose today you do have 1,000 number of users on your e-commerce application. Tomorrow it's a sale day, correct? Or any of the festive season. Accidentally, sorry, not accidentally. You are predicting that your traffic is going to be high, or even if you are not predicting, suddenly it will go high. So what you will have to do? First of all, your e-commerce application should be highly available. For that, you can deploy this in multiple subnets. Your load balancer should be available in across the multiple availability zones. That means in the different multiple subnets, correct? Then you will have to attach this auto scaling groups so that whenever the number of requests increases, the CPU utilization increases, the scale happens dynamically. For that, you will have to create the auto scaling groups. You will have to create the different target groups to handle the different kind of request based on the different part to handle it smoothly. Even you will have to attach the dynamic policy in the auto scaling groups so that whenever the certain number of requests increases, it will automatically scale up the number of instances, and whenever the traffic reduces, it will automatically scale down the number of instances, right? So that kind of setup you will have to do over here. Next question, have you experienced any challenging issue in your project? How did you or your team identify and resolve such issue? For that, if you have worked with any such scenario, if you have worked with any such issues in your current project or previous project, that you can explain in details. You can talk about the technical things as well, you can talk about the non-technical things as well, correct? That means whenever a issue arises, you get that, like the whoever identify it, there might be a scenario that customer identifies the problem, he reports it to the customer support team or any of the client facing team which is in your organization, correct? So it will report to that. They will either create a Jira for you, or they can create any tickets for you based on the tool what you are using, ServiceNow or any other tool you are using, GitHub issues. So any kind of thing they can pass it to your team, and then from your team someone will be assigned to work on that, correct? And then they will work. It fits the production issue and that needs to be immediately fixed. There will be a call, major bridge call. You can call that bridge call. You can any terminology whatever your organization is giving for that particular call. So emergency call or anything, correct? So that call will be set up and the different team will be there, and whoever represents that team, that a spokesperson will be there on the team, and they will sit together to fix that particular issue, correct? So for that you can mention anything like database storage limit got exceeded, or your application URL which was deployed, application API which was deployed, that was having the bug. So any kind of issue you can explain and you can answer. Next question is, suppose I have one running server in AWS on which my internet facing e-commerce application is running. The application needs to show product pictures on the portal, and all these pictures are stored in S3 bucket. What does that mean? You have one EC2 machine on which one application is running. That means it's a public EC2 address, EC2 instance as well, you can say. Just suppose that it's a public EC2 machine on which your one application is running, and this application has to fetch some of the images from the S3 bucket. So it's a simple architecture. You have to establish the communication between EC2 to S3. So for that you can create one IAM role. You will give that S3 access policy to the IAM role, and that IAM role will be attached to the EC2 machine. Then it will have the access to get the pictures from the S3 bucket. So that will be simple solution for your 34th question, correct? Then next question is, which all AWS service will you consider while setting up CI/CD pipeline? If you are setting your Jenkins as a CI/CD pipeline, you can consider and you are deploying your application on the EKS cluster, so you can consider the EKS. You can consider your ECR to create the Docker images and post it to the repository, so you can consider ECR. If you are using the AWS managed services for the storage as well, you can consider the S3. You can consider AWS RDS service. You can consider KMS, Secret Manager. So all these services you can consider while setting up the CI/CD pipeline. Mainly, you can consider this your EC2 machines to run as a slave machines, correct? Then you can consider your what we can say the ECR, where you will push the images, whatever images you will create, you will post it on there. So you can consider the EKS cluster to which you will communicate, and you will deploy your services, correct, the applications itself. So these are the few services you can consider while setting up the CI/CD pipeline for your applications. So in this video, I wanted to talk about all these 5 questions only, which are scenario based, and in next video we'll be talking more about the different interview questions and the different AWS services. Till the time, thank you, bye bye, and stay tuned with the channel, and subscribe to the channel as well, because that is the only thing which motivates me to create more and more content specifically. So till the time, thank you, bye bye.